Hey everybody, it's me, the real king of BC. And lately I've been noticing a lot of people talking about how different cartoons are nowadays compared to how they used to be in the 2000s and the 90s and even the 80s. And this is a very interesting conversation because, well, yeah, of course cartoons nowadays are going to be different from cartoons from the 2000s and the 90s and the 80s. Every generation has its own style, right? Like in general, the 80s had its own style, the 90s had its own style, the 2000s had their own style. Every generation will be different from the next. This is to be expected. That's just how it is. Cartoons have evolved over the years, much like technology in a way. In fact, I would say that cartoons and technology have a very similar evolution pattern, but technology and cartoons have evolved in different ways. But in my opinion, it's fairly similar. Regardless of that, I don't really think the cartoons of today are too different from the cartoons of yesterday. Like, okay, they may seem like incredibly different when you look at them side to side, but then you look at them and it's like, well, it's not that different. There were at least a couple shows in the 90s not that focused on action and some extreme stuff here and there, but also some world building and character building. And there are also shows like that nowadays. And the 2000s, basically the same thing. I would say the 2000s was a really good bridge between yesterday's cartoons and nowadays cartoons, because the 2000s seemed to have a nice blend of both. It had some 90s stuff, but it also had some stuff that would become more relevant when the 2010s came around. So, yeah. You may disagree, but I feel like there was a healthy mix of both in the 2000s, at least for the most part. Right. That's more so how I feel. If you feel different, then that is fine, but yeah. In the 2000s, as we all know, cartoons became more anime inspired, though there were a couple cartoons that weren't necessarily anime inspired. There were a decent amount of them, whether they were on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or even on the Disney Channel. Not all of them necessarily were inspired by anime, but one of the biggest examples of that was Avatar The Last Airbender, for obvious reasons. And then you have Teen Titans 2003. Also, maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003 if you want to say that's anime inspired. Personally, that's more comic book inspired because they took more from the comic book side of things. That show was basically an animated adaptation of the classic Mirage Turtles comic book. If you've read those comics, then please let me know. They seem very interesting, but I haven't read them. But yeah, those are only a few examples of Western media being influenced by anime. There are a couple other examples. Actually, I guess Totally Spies is a really good one. Hey, does anyone remember Totally Spies? I hope so. It was a good show, but, anyways. Actually, maybe Ben 10? I don't know. Anyway, the point is that anime was getting very big during the 2000s, and because of that, there were multiple shows that took influences from anime. So, there you go. A couple of these shows actually became fairly popular, as I'm sure we already know, but a few of them had fallen to the wayside in recent years because, hey, not all of us can be super popular. So, yeah, well, obviously. If everybody is popular, then nobody's popular. That's just how it is. But yeah, a lot of people don't really like the difference between the 2000s cartoons and the 2010 cartoons, and I don't understand why. Like, a lot of people make it seem like nowadays, and discounts the 2020s too, that a lot of cartoons are just bad, which is not true. Now, bad cartoons have always been a thing. They've always existed throughout, basically the same time as good cartoons, like, right? Both good and bad cartoons have existed for about as long as cartoons themselves have. You need to have a balance. Not everything can be good, but not everything can be bad. You have to take the good with the bad. That's always how it's been. And in my opinion, it feels like people are exaggerating how many bad cartoons there are. Like, there don't seem to be that many bad cartoons nowadays. Obviously, there are a couple of them, but I don't know that many of them. Um, like, there's a pretty stellar lineup of actually good cartoons, like Adventure Time and Regular Show, right? Gravity Falls. And those are only 3 good examples. There's also shows like Gravity Train, which I've heard of, but I haven't actually seen. I'm not entirely sure about Steven Universe. People are very mixed on Steven Universe. If you like or don't like it, please tell me why. And those are only a few examples, but there's so many more cartoons out there that are actually pretty good. However, there are also multiple cartoons and Toy Chins that weren't that good, like Planet Sheen, or Fanboy and Chum Chum, or Breadwinners. So, yeah, but there weren't that many of those. I fail to understand what people mean when they say nowadays cartoons are all bad or they're all the same. They have a fairly similar art style, at least for the most part, but I wouldn't really say they're the same or that they're all bad. I mean, look, if you don't like those shows, that's fine, right? That's a whole nother conversation. You do you, alright? That's your opinion, but just because you don't like a show, that doesn't mean it's bad, per se. People need to stop with this ridiculous mentality saying that, oh, nowadays, every cartoon is bad. No, they're not. You just don't like them. You just don't like the style, and you know what? That's fine. You can have your own opinion. Not all of us have to have the same opinion, but just because you don't like a show, that doesn't automatically mean it's bad. And can I talk about something real quick? I may just go on a mini rant, but can we please stop mentioning Cal Arts? Like, Cal Arts is not a real thing. It's just a thing that people made up, right? Like, people talk about Cal Arts like it's this big thing, but all it really is, it's just an art style that people create after they've been to an art school in California. Hence the term Cal Arts, California Arts University. If you can tell me the name of the specific school that this comes from, then that'd be good, because I would think that California has a lot of different schools that would teach you all about art. And when I say school, I mostly mean colleges. But my point is that Cal Arts isn't necessarily a real art style. It's just a thing that people made up just so they can bash modern cartoons for looking similar or the same, which is really dumb. Now, look, there are actually a lot of really good cartoons nowadays, and you guys are missing out, in my opinion. If you really think that, please give these shows a try. You don't have to love them. You don't have to like them, but at least respect that they're actually doing something different. Hell, I mean, there's actually a good focus on storytelling, world building, and character building in these shows. There's a good focus on all of them. I don't understand why so many people are so blind to any of that. While I haven't seen all of these shows, it seems ridiculous to paint all of them as the same. Right? It's ridiculous. Not all of these shows are the same. And while not all of them are necessarily perfect, they don't have to be. They just need to be good. Heck, even decent. I think a really good example of this is the new She-Ra, right? Like, as it turns out, that show was way better than people made it out to be. Is it perfect? Well, no, but it doesn't need to be. It's actually a genuinely good show. Sure. Not everything about it is necessarily good, but as it turns out, it's actually not as bad as people made it out to be. Shocker, I know. Look, it just seems like people are exaggerating, in my opinion. If you don't like modern-day cartoons, then that's your problem, right? But don't act like all modern-day cartoons are bad just because you like them. It's ridiculous. And please stop blaming everything on Cal Arts. In my opinion, it's you. You're the problem. That's just how I see things. If you see it differently, then you know what? That's fine. Alright, rant over. Alright, I just wanted to say my piece on that, because for the longest time that has been bugging me. Like, that has been annoying me. Like, seriously. It is ridiculous how many people just come up with ridiculous reasons for not liking modern day cartoons. It just feels like they're moving the goalpost multiple times. It's ridiculous, right? But, yeah. Look, modern day cartoons are different from yesterday's cartoons. They're different from cartoons in the 90s. the 2000s, the 80s, and that is perfectly fine. Not every cartoon generation has to be the same. They're all different in one way or the other. They all evolve. And they've evolved to a point where cartoons can basically do different things. Some focus more on action, some focus more on story, some focus more on world building or even relationships between characters, or even including more diverse characters, right, or diverse locations, and have different types of storytelling embedded within them. Not every cartoon nowadays is the same. Alright? Some are similar, and sure, a few may have a thing in common with each other. Maybe the same art style, maybe the same character archetypes, that's fine, but that doesn't mean the whole shows themselves are necessarily the same. That's just generalizing for the sake of generalizing, and it's ridiculous that so many people are willing to do that. It's like, please, open your eyes. Open your eyes to the world of cartoons that we have nowadays, and there's actually a pretty stellar lineup of actually really good cartoons, and while not all of them are winners, most of them are actually pretty good. And you know what? I think that's good. I'm glad the cartoons have evolved to a point where we're still having plenty of good cartoons made by plenty of good artists, and people who are definitely passionate about the cartoons they make, and even the fans that they've made along the way, and even show their fans the gratitude that they desperately deserve. So yes, that is what I think about how different cartoons are nowadays compared to how they were back then. People overstate the difference. They exaggerate it. They make it seem way worse than what it really is. There are bad cartoons nowadays, but there's always been bad cartoons, just like there's always been good cartoons. So, yeah, that's just how I see it. If you don't like today's cartoons, then that's fine, but don't go glorifying all of the cartoons from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, because, listen, not all of them were perfect either. There were definitely a couple stinkers within those decades. Let's all be real here. No cartoon is perfect, and none of them should be. They should be good. They should be functional, and they should be enjoyable. That's how it should be. We shouldn't strive for perfection. Not at all, no. We should strive for accuracy. We should strive for enjoyment. And what do you enjoy? Well, that's up to you. And if you do like today's cartoons, please tell me why. And please tell me which cartoons you enjoy. Now, this is a very important video for me because I am very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about cartoons. I've been watching them since I was a kid. And there are plenty of good ones out there. There are a couple bad ones, but there don't seem to be that many of them. But anyway, if you want to keep supporting me, please do not forget to check the description. All of my social media stuff is in there. It is very important. And of course, as per usual, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And have a nice day. Real King out.